In today's video, I built every American war in LEGO. From the Revolution, to Vietnam, to the Gulf War, and so many more LEGO wars are built in today's video. We're going to see the men behind these wars as well as battlefield combat. There may even be some American wars you have never heard of. So stay tuned until the end of the video for a giant LEGO minifigure giveaway. Subscribe to help us get to 300,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and let's get into this thing. This is LEGO George Washington, the OG President of the United States. And this is George Washington with a minigun. George, this isn't invented for like 300 more years. Here, have this nice musket. Now, before George actually managed to become president, he had to win the country from the king. And that king, of course, would be George III of England. So George and his homies, the founding fathers, started a revolution, the American Revolution, the first true war of the United States. And this is George and the boys crossing the Delaware to flank the Hessian mercenaries who were busy partying it up during Christmas time.
Feliz Navidad y próspero año nuevo.
Little known fact, Jeff was also a part of the Revolutionary War. But he sadly fell out of the boat into the Delaware and basically became a colonial popsicle while George Washington and the boys hit the beaches of the Hessians.
Hello, how are you? I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
And a lot of this Revolutionary War fighting involved this guerrilla-style attack. Meanwhile, many of the British generals, such as Cornwallis, Howe, and Gage, had their mindsets stuck in the line battle era of warfare. So here are our Brits, and let's assemble them in redcoat line battle formation. Our redcoats are now in classic line battle formation. This formation will allow them to do rolling fire. Now, once the top line has fired all their shots, the soldiers kneeling on the ground should have reloaded, can stand up and fire themselves. And despite this dated strategy, they had the guns to back it up and the troops. So we've built this small gun position up here where we can plop a couple of nice mortar cannons. And you know, we should probably have the troopers to load them on up. Here we go, we now have our loader up here shoving cannonballs into the cannons. We've got our aimer and firer positioning the cannons. And finally, the artillery officer giving the orders where and when to shoot. These American dogs will not live up to good old European tactics. Or will they? Because good old Georgie boy here has been scheming. Oh no! George Washington orders his loyal soldiers to use hit-and-run guerrilla warfare tactics. It was a controversial strategy of the times, considered to be dishonorable for any general and his army to partake in. But this was for freedom. They would do whatever it took. And the American French allies hated the Brits so much that they were just chill with it.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
So let's set up our lads here into some crazy ambush positions of the British line battle formation. And there we have it, boys, a beautiful showing of American Revolution guerrilla warfare. We've got a bayonet charge coming down the middle, with a number of soldiers already dropping due to British redcoat fire. The Americans will persist because they have soldiers coming out of the woodwork, attacking British officers by surprise, firing from the bushes, as well as from the trees. The middle soldiers here need to provide the distraction so the rest of the troops can commit to the ambush. And the guns up top are far less of a problem because more troopers have started to pick off cannon workers. And we have a small raid going on up here where the British general is about to get slapped around a little bit, baby. Eventually, all of this fighting results in American independence. And George Washington gets elected eventually after, some failed democratic experiences, like the Articles of Confederation, which were super poopy. Washington would finish his presidency without seeing another major war, besides a couple pesky farmer rebellions here and there. But the next war would be under the leadership of his good buddy, James Madison. Madison would declare war on the British in the War of 1812. This war started when the British used impressment to force American sailors to join the British Navy.
Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
which obviously the Americans were pretty peeved about. Even though the British were busy dealing with Napoleon in Europe, they were able to build a pretty good force. They deployed thousands of British redcoats on the shores of America and marched on Washington, D.C. Well, then they ended up lighting the original White House on fire. Not cool, dude. That was kind of cringe. But luckily, First Lady Madison, being one of the only forward thinkers, saved thousands of our nation's documents, paintings, and historical artifacts from the fire. So now Madison was down a White House, as well as 2,500 service members. And he had already fielded 286,000 service members according to Veterans Affairs. 70,000 more than were fielded in the American Revolution. And they were losing.
Now that's a lot of damage!
So eventually, the Treaty of Ghent was signed, and formally the war was over. However, back in the day, it would take quite a while for messengers to go across from Belgium to the United States. So that's how future President Andrew Jackson ended up fighting in the most important American victory in the war after the war ended, the Battle of New Orleans. As Jackson and his men prepared for the Redcoat invasion of Louisiana, sneaky dealings were happening on the British side. The British general had invited a strange guest to dinner, that being pirate captain Pierre Lafitte, who was extremely puzzled as to why he was there. He'd been wanted by the British government for quite some time. Well, the British invited him aboard his ship because he wanted to make an offer. The pirate captain and his men joined the British and fight the Americans together in exchange for a pardon and some serious cash money. The pirate captain was insulted and refused. Instead, he went to the ramparts of Jackson's fort and informed the general of what happened. He then offers him and his men to the general, who hesitantly accepts the pirates' alliance. And it was much needed. Jackson's numbers paled in comparison to the British army, so the pirate soldiers would offer some much needed assistance. Why don't we go ahead and build the Battle of New Orleans during the War of 1812. Well, we've got our fort ramparts all set up. On top of that, the battlefield terrain is supposed to be a little bit swampy and muddy. It is New Orleans after all. And really, the uniforms between the two sides hadn't changed that much since the Revolutionary War, nor did the weaponry. We can still use the same cannons and muskets. So let's go ahead and assemble the second major conflict in American history. And there we have it. War of 1812, Battle of New Orleans mock. We've got the British general riding in on horseback, British artillery cannons in the back ready to fire. A cannon shell has already ripped through a portion of the ramparts over here, where the pirate captain now has to fight for his very life. We've also got a small mound of foundation here, which the redcoats are using to charge up the ramparts. Swordsmen and bayonets are drawn, ready to counter, and General Jackson is up top with his flintlock pistol, shooting down redcoats who charge up.
I started blasting. Bang!
Redcoat skirmishers are also sniping from dirt mounds below, but the pirates, as well as the United States Army, is doing a bang-up job defending the top ramparts here and preventing the British redcoats from getting through. More British redcoats march in as reinforcers, but the American and pirate defense holds tight. And Andrew Jackson is quoted as saying, "The pirate cannon team was some of the best he'd ever seen in his life."
That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
And would gladly incorporate them in his own army, resulting in the outnumbering British taking devastating losses. Sadly, this battle truly was for naught, as again, the treaty had already been signed in Belgium, and these souls were fighting long after peace had been negotiated. However, the next American war would be very consequential to American history and involve Andrew Jackson. That would be his quote-unquote war against the Native American population, aka the Indian Wars. It lasted from 1817 to 1898, and according to Veterans Affairs, 1,000 American soldiers would lose their lives, but this was hardly a war. It was more or less the systematic slaughter of the native population, and leaves a very dark mark on American history. Now, during this time, James K. Polk was real interested in Manifest Destiny. He went to his little strategy board, which totally wasn't a dollhouse, which he used to play dolls.
Stop it. Get some help.
And concocted a way to take over more territory. He forced a border dispute with the Mexican army, which he used as an excuse to declare war. The Mexican army did do a decent job attempting to defend their land, but inevitably, destiny did manifest.
What's it look like we're doing? It's manifest destiny.
in the form of the superior American military, baby. Yeah, in 2 years, we ended up claiming over 500,000 square miles, making it a gigantic land sum for America. Now, the writing was on the wall for the next American war for years, and it was being led by this man, the original neckbeard, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States of America. And he had his far more famous number 2, Robert E. Lee. This is a Brickmania custom Robert E. Lee, and I think we all know how expensive these minifigs are, so it better be pretty good. And yeah, I would say they did a pretty darn good job on this fella. Amazing print detail all around this minifig. A custom painted Colt revolver right there from the time period.
Nice.
Pretty much everything you could want from a custom American Civil War minifigure. These two were by far the most infamous leaders of the Confederacy. On the other side of things, we had one of the presidential goats, Honest Abe Lincoln.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT!
Now this boy went through a lot of generals. Probably one of the most famous, future President Ulysses S. Grant. Now I don't actually have any Civil War minifigures to make a battle with, so I went and did a little shopping.
Oh, he just like me. He just like me for real.
And I got these bad boys. Civil War battle packs from DaleyBricks. Let's check it out. Each battle pack comes with one Union soldier and one Confederate soldier. Each is custom printed on authentic Lego and comes with these really cool custom Springfield rifles. Now in this war for slavery, and no I didn't misspeak, we're going to be doing Pickett's Charge. So we need to build Union defenses and a Confederate offense. And all of these soldiers will be getting involved in the fray. But I also bought a couple of these DaleyBricks cannons. Let's build it. Oh yeah, baby. That looks incredible. Let's set these defenders up with some serious ammunition.
I'm about to make a name for myself here.
With the BrickTactical.com cannonball stack, as well as some more contemporary ammunition shells in some various barrels from Uncle Sam. Now let's go ahead and build the battlefield for Pickett's Charge during the Battle of Gettysburg. There is our Pennsylvania townhouse wall. Union officer in the back lines. Now let's give him some infantry. There we go. A few soldiers standing in position, ready to fire at the Confederate charge. But we're obviously also going to need some gun positions. So we'll make a little bit of room here and slap a cannon in the wall. Obviously, we need at least one cannon operator back here, and we can tilt the cannon down so it's in a good firing position. Then a nice little ammunition dump to fill out the space a little bit more. I also want to have one dead Union soldier, maybe on like the corner over here so he's fallen on the wall, put his Springfield rifle on the ground, and now we need the Confederates who killed him. Now we're going to have our Confederate soldiers charging through the field here, and Pickett's Charge was on the final day of the 3-day Battle of Gettysburg, which ultimately turned the war in the favor of the Union. Confederates just had to play defensively, man, but Robert E. Lee got just a little bit too cocky.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
And there is our final Confederate soldier. And let's go ahead and have a broken down cannon on the battlefield over this way too. Just to add a little bit more flavor. And there we have it, the turning point in the war for the Union Army, and the beginning of the end of the short-lived Confederacy. With the Union soldiers able to make decisive blows against the Confederate infrastructure in their march to the sea, the Confederate Army crumbles. And Abe here is able to breathe a sigh of relief. He travels to Ford's Theater in order to see a play. Oh, and what's this? How nice. He has a visitor. John Wilkes Booth. Oh, wait a minute, he's got a gun! Speaking of assassinated presidents, President McKinley, who had major beef with the Spanish off of Cuba. This is the USS Maine, which totally was put off of Cuba innocently and didn't explode for absolutely no reason at all. And as it sunk and soldiers were trapped within its walls, America blamed the very strange destruction on the Spanish. It totally wasn't self-sabotage.
Out of the deal, out of the deal.
The US Army then wasted no time in assembling units and marching to war. And with them was future President Theodore Roosevelt and his Rough Rider cavalry. He made quite the name for himself in this war, but Can you really call it that? The United States absolutely demolished the Spanish, claiming a victory quickly. According to Veterans Affairs, the United States only suffered 385 battle-related deaths. Compare that to the nearly 600,000 low estimate deaths of the American Civil War. So the old bull moose here claimed some fame, and years later, we would be entering in to one of the deadliest events in world history. For you see, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was traveling down the streets in his convoy, and our boy Gabriel Princip here was getting a sandwich
Moist and delicious.
after him and his cronies failed to assassinate the Archduke. He of course notices the convoy, raises his gun, and fires, killing our boy here, and effectively causing World War I and being the spark that lit the powder keg. Obviously, there's much more to this story, but we're only interested in America for this video, so let's get into some trench warfare. Firstly, we need the trenches. I think that this should do the trick. This is one of my favorite custom trench mocks. You can actually peel it off and reorganize the trenches however you like through their little studs here. Right now we have it aligned with a bunker at the front here, multiple cannons and firing positions, as well as a couple of larger artillery cannons in the back lines there. There are also some pretty cool medical bays inside of the trench like here, and small armories beneath other trench blocks. And I've got some additional defenses we can set up, such as barbed wire and much larger caliber howitzers, which artillery was the leading death of the war. And I've also got heavy machine guns.
I am heavy weapons guy.
All of these brand new inventions just tore apart all of the European nations. And of course, eventually, America got involved, and the doughboys were sent on overseas, after things like the sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmermann telegram. Now this trench is going to be an Allied trench, so bring in the French, who fought exceptionally hard during World War I, and are much deserving of these American doughboy reinforcements. Kaiser Wilhelm here wants the Allied trench raided, so let's go ahead and give him some forces to do so. Well, there we have it. The German army has joined the battlefield, and these guys are hardened veterans. The US doughboys, not so much. And while they may have been eager to enter the war, shell shock, later known as PTSD, would absolutely destroy this generation of men, resulting in them being called the Silent Generation. Now let's build ourselves a battle. We have our trench crossroads here, and I want to fill it with soldiers defending.
A few moments later.
There we go. French and American soldiers sharing the trench here, and we're going to make them surrounded. Meaning we take our German soldiers, put them coming down the trenches, as well as in the trenches attacking.
A few moments later.
And there we have it. A beautiful World War I battlefield with Germans coming up over the top surrounding the defenders. We've got sharpshooters rifling fire down at the defenders. We've got bayonet charges happening inside the trenches. Brand new submachine gun technology used for raiding. And folks getting skewered as they fall on top of bayonets. In total, the US military would lose 53,402 soldiers from battle deaths, and an additional 63,000 from non-related battle deaths. If anyone ever tells you America didn't do anything during World War I, that's a lie. Over 100,000 people sacrificed themselves. And during this gruesome modern war, there was a messenger who was responsible for the sequel, World War II, Electric Boogaloo. That would be Brickler. Now, Brickler did not have to deal with the Americans until late into the war, because a certain ally of his decided to wake the sleeping beast. And then Brickler was put on the defensive. Now for World War II, I thought about using these LCVP Higgins boats and creating World War II D-Day again. But I've done that in like 5 different videos now, so I decided let's do something different. One battle from the European theater and one battle from the Pacific theater. Since, honestly, it might as well have been 2 different wars we were fighting at once. Let's start with the European theater. Before we get into the World War II builds, I wanted to let you guys know that the DaleyBricks mystery bags and boxes over on DaleyBricks.com are back in stock with some incredible custom clone troopers that you can get inside of the mystery boxes and bags. Link in the description below if you're interested, and use code GONK, G-O-N-K, for a % off your order. Now let's build some World War II. This is the Ardennes Forest. Well, Okay, it's going to be, because we're going to be having the US soldiers defending in the Battle of the Bulge. So we need to go ahead and transform this tundra into a little bit more of a forest scene. And here's our terrain for the Battle of the Bulge. Let's go ahead and take our DaleyBricks Winter Trooper here and give him the BAR machine gun, baby. He will be heavy weapons man. And we gave him a nice little snowdrift firing position over here. Just behind him is a nice little dugout foxhole. You can see the fresh dirt there around the snow. Inside that foxhole is going to be this trooper here with the bazooka, and we'll give him a reloader partner here with a pistol. And there we go. They can be nice and snug inside their very romantic foxhole.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Is that an armor-piercing round in your pants? Or are you just excited to feed my bazooka? And then we're going to use some Panzer Grenadiers as the assaulters, as well as some standard Wehrmacht soldiers in their counterattack. This Panzer Grenadier is going to be running and firing with the MP40 behind this little sapling. Then we'll have these three boys pushing towards the bazooka trooper over here. One attempting a bayonet rush from the side, another tried the same at the front but was killed. STG trooper providing cover fire for the bayonet charge. A nice little Ardennes forest mock in the Battle of the Bulge, but we're gonna be going from the cold front here to somewhere a little bit more tropical. That's where this boyo comes into play. Douglas MacArthur in the Pacific front of World War II, taking his battleships to island hop across enemy territory. So we're going to be using this for a little beach invasion mock. But I only have these two Japanese soldiers, a Marine and a conscript. Not enough, but I did just buy these custom World War II Japanese infantrymen. They come with the classic helmet as well as an Arisaka rifle with a bayonet, very nice. But let me go ahead and spice up this beach with a little bit more foliage so that they can hide and do Japanese style tactics.
The next day.
There we go, some nice beachside jungle foliage. And now we hide our Japanese soldiers amongst the flora. A soldier amongst the bushes over here, one sitting on a sand dune over this way, another deep in the foliage over here, and finally, one running as reinforcements over this way. As for the American force, we've got our US Marines and a Higgins boat, since we are doing beach hopping. We have our landing craft doors open up here. One soldier died while trying to climb over the side. Another died running through the water, but then one does make it on the beach, as does the Thompson gunner over here. But we forgot about the Japanese Marines. They're coming out of the jungle and full-on bonsai charging the Marines on the beach, looking to skewer them. But luckily the Marines do have a little bit of backup. They've got some Navy personnel on these 30 cals in the Higgins boats that can fire up and take out the bonsai chargers. Well, all of this Pacific island hopping ended up just kind of fizzling out when Daddy Oppenheimer here helped to create the atomic bomb, destroying Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the process. Now there was one very big fan of this bomb, and no, it was not the Japanese. That would be Douglas MacArthur here, the man in charge of the Japanese island hopping, and he wanted it used in the next American war. The Korean War, also known as the Forgotten War, and here we have a Brickmania Korean War US Army rifleman. Let's pop this sucker out. My boy is looking fresh to death.
Nice.
Now the thing is, most of the US Army soldiers from the Korean War used extremely similar uniforms to the Pacific Front in World War II. So I only bought the one particular Korean soldier here. Now, luckily for all of us, Truman said no frickin' way to the atomic bomb being used in Korea. But MacArthur would still get his war. So we've got our Korean soldiers here, and then we've got our US soldiers. And finally, we've actually got United Nations soldiers, because they participated against North Korea in the war. Now let's build the Korean War. We're going to be starting off with a gray baseplate slab here. The reason for this is the Korean War was fought on a lot of mountainous and hillside regions. So let me use these rock mountains to build a little combat.
It's not just a boulder, it's a rock.
And here we have our simple mountain range setup. Let me go ahead and affix the figures. Now, during the Korean War, the United States used World War II weapons. Meanwhile, the Korean forces used World War II Russian weapons, like this PPSH here, or this trooper here, who's already killed a US sniper and is now fighting against a Thompson gunner beyond the wall. This Brickmania Korean soldier is getting ready to fire at this trooper trying to haul his body over the wall. He's already placed his gun up here and is now going to attempt the climb. The UN soldier back here is backing them up with rifle fire, and we have a downed US soldier over here who is in need of medical assistance. The Korean War was the first major proxy war of the Cold War. But for the most part, beyond proxy wars, the American CIA and the Russian KGB mainly took care of business behind the shadows. But one of the most major conflicts of these wars, would come later. And this pilot is here to tell you all about it, son. This is a Vietnam War era US pilot.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Now let's go ahead and build him this Huey helicopter from DaleyBricks. And there we have it. This Huey helicopter pilot now has an absolutely incredible Vietnam War era helicopter. Of course, its rotors spin on the tail too, and its doors slide on open. And there's room for 2 crew members inside. So I think this heli pilot needs some friends from BrickTactical.com. That's right, a couple more Vietnam War era jumpsuit pilots. And I also purchased a couple of these Vietnam War era grunt uniforms. As for the Viet Cong, we can build our own. You could take the Gandalf shirt, add a nice tactical vest, and give him a straw hat right there. Take some of the Wild West gunslingers and give them straw hats as well. They look okay. I purchased these to make them look great. Brickmania.com Viet Cong torsos. Let me assemble our Viet Cong and US Army. We've got our Vietnam soldiers all armored up. Now, the Vietnam War was one of the longest US wars, so weaponry evolved over time. I went with a mid to late war kit. We've got an M60 gunner over here with a very cool ammo bandolier. Then we've got US assault rifles as well as snipers over this way. And of course, the iconic, ironic peace helmet. The Viet Cong, on the other hand, look really cool. They're utilizing a mix of Russian provided weapons and World War II surplus, which actually came from both the Germans and the Soviet era of weaponry. Now, the Viet Cong obviously used a lot of ambush guerrilla warfare tactics, and the United States had most of the superior weaponry, so I want to base the battle around that, with this Huey being ambushed by the Viet Cong while it unloads US supplies. So let me go ahead and whip something up for us here.
Victory.
The trees are speaking Vietnamese, fellas. The Huey is currently being ambushed. Soldiers in the back start to take out their supplies. When they do so, Viet Cong soldiers begin to fire on the Huey, trying to take them by surprise. They have a multitude of troopers attacking from different angles. The US grunts begin to respond with fire of their own from the trees. Over here, a soldier attacks the flank, firing at the Huey pilot. A US soldier over here has stumbled into a Viet Cong bear trap, and the Huey M60 gunner can only look on. While the US soldiers defend the supplies being taken, Viet Cong troops rush out of other trees behind and flank the remaining grunts right here. The Huey is surrounded by jungle and hostiles are everywhere. The US military cannot figure out or pinpoint where to shoot. This actually might be like my favorite build of the video so far, but certainly not a favorite war of America, as over 100,000 service members died according to Veterans Affairs, and many, many, many more were injured. Not to mention civilians, not the Viet Cong, had deaths over 3 million. Many atrocities were committed by both sides, and this was certainly not a just war in the slightest, but the worst victims were the Vietnamese civilians by far. And this is the start of United States police actions in foreign countries resulting in horrible things. And now we're in the era of desert warfare. Desert Shield and Desert Storm, aka the Gulf War. These are custom US service members, and I have additional headless troopers here as well. I'm going to equip them with Brick Tactical gas masks, because we just don't know what kind of chemical weapons are going to be being used. Here we go, now folks can survive any strange weapons thrown at them. And a big factor in Desert Storm and Desert Shield was the use of the brand new GPS technology from coalition forces, as well as modern weaponry like the M1 Abrams tank.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
Now, the war began when the Iraqi forces successfully invaded Kuwait. They essentially raised hell for a few days, and managed to capture most of the country. But the rest of the world wasn't too keen on that. And so the rest of the world formed a coalition and pretty much curb stomped them. Once Kuwait was liberated, coalition forces began their march and invasion of Iraq. The war was often known as the video game war, due to news media teams pretty much constantly filming the action. This war has some of the most impressive statistics from Veterans Affairs. 2.2 million US service members were deployed, 148 died in battle, 235 other deaths in theater happened. There are still 1.68 million living veterans. But then something tragic happened in 2001.
Oh no!
And it happened during George Bush's presidency. This is George Bush. And it happened in September. I can't talk about it because YouTube. But needless to say, he went to war, and that war lasted until 2021, according to Veterans Affairs, but some may be able to argue it's still going on. The War on Terror. We already have a decent amount of modern US military soldiers. However, I purchased some more from Brickmania for this video. We have a US Army Ranger. This guy looks pretty freaking incredible, man, with the custom painted M16A4. We also have the modern US Marine Rifleman. He too looks extremely good, although he doesn't come with a rifle. What the heck, man? And finally, the Neptune Spear US Navy SEAL. Bro looks incredible with these NVGs. I mean, doesn't get much better than that. In addition to these modern US soldiers, we also have a modern US Striker and a modern US Humvee. And I want to make an ambush battle with these guys. So let's build a nice little desert here. Alright, here is our desert battlefield. We can toss our APC right there and our Humvee in the front. Now we need to crew these bad boys and set up the ambush.
A few moments later.
A series of IEDs have exploded at the front of the military convoy. Flames erupt from the Striker APC. An insurgent rocket trooper stands with an RPG, ready to fire and finish off the weapon. But the APC is already done for, as the tank crew commander tries to escape from the hatch. Beneath him, a wounded soldier fires his pistol, taking out a number of insurgents trying to charge the convoy. But to the right, soldiers are less lucky, getting hit hard by incoming AK fire from more insurgents. They're mobilizing outside of the APC as well as the Humvee, trying to get action fire down, and support the Humvee from exploding as well, because if this goes, they have no way home. But another insurgent comes out close quarters and chops down a Marine. The HMG up top spots it and lets off a burst round. Other light machine gunners on the back of the Humvee are also spraying fire at the charging insurgents. It is all-out war in the War on Terror. And hopefully, this is the last American war that we have to go through for some time. Obviously, war is inevitable in this world. Sadly, leaders can rarely find peaceful ways out of situations. If we can keep from having to mobilize our military forces for some time, that would be greatly ideal. Veterans Affairs does not currently have numbers on the losses from the War on Terror. But I'd like to thank all of the veterans who have fought for our country. You all made the ultimate sacrifice of your lives and your family. Either way, guys, this is the final war in this video that we're going to be covering, but let's get into the giveaway. I'm going to be giving away one minifigure from just about every era of US military uniform. From the War on Terror to the Gulf War to Vietnam, Korea, World War II, Civil War, Revolution, War of 1812, all of these troopers you guys see here will be given away to one lucky winner. All you gotta do to enter and to win is hit the like button, subscribe with notifications turned on, and comment down below either the American war that you found the most interesting, or if you have any veterans in your family and what era were they in the armed forces. Thank y'all so much for watching. Peace.